Bryce Canyon, the park that looks like another planet. In 1928, a Mormon settler named Ebenezer Bryce was asked what he thought of the canyon that would eventually bear his name. His answer has been quoted in every piece of writing about this place ever since. A hell of a place to lose a cow. He was not wrong. The terrain below the rim of Bryce Canyon is a labyrinth of narrow fins, deep gullies, and standing rock columns so tightly packed and so visually similar that orientation within it is genuinely difficult, even with a trail underfoot. Cattle that wandered into it did not come out easily. But Ebenezer Bryce was ranching. He was not looking at what geologists have since confirmed, that Bryce Canyon contains the highest concentration of hoodoos, freestanding pinnacles of eroded rock on Earth, that the amphitheater visible from the rim is the product of a frost-driven erosion process so precise and so active that the park is measurably, documentably, visibly changing year by year. That the rock record exposed in those pinnacles spans 60 million years of planetary history. That the night sky above the plateau is among the darkest in the continental United States. Ebenezer Bryce saw a place that was inconvenient for livestock management. He was standing at the edge of one of the most geologically extraordinary landscapes on the planet. The view has not changed. Only the frame around it has. Not a canyon. Bryce Canyon is not a canyon. The word canyon implies a river, a watercourse that cut downward through rock, producing the vertical walls and flat floors that define the Grand Canyon Zion Canyonlands. The formations at Bryce were not produced by a river cutting in. They were produced by the plateau edge eroding outward. The Pink Cliffs, the geological formation that forms Bryce's amphitheaters, are the uppermost layer of what geologists call the Grand Staircase, a sequence of sedimentary formations that step down from Bryce's elevation of roughly 9,000 feet to the bottom of the Grand Canyon over a horizontal distance of approximately 100 miles. Each step is a different geological layer. Bryce sits at the top of that staircase, in rock deposited 60 million years ago as sediment at the bottom of a shallow lake. The erosion that produced the hoodoos is not primarily water. It is ice. The plateau sits at an elevation where temperatures cross the freezing point approximately 200 times per year. Not 200 cold nights, 200 freeze-thaw cycles, where the temperature rises above 32 degrees during the day and drops below it at night. Water enters cracks in the rock, freezes, expands by approximately 9%, and forces the crack wider. The next day it melts. The next night it freezes again. 200 times per year, year after year. For millions of years. The Claren Formation erodes unevenly. Hard caps above softer rock create narrow fins, windows, and columns as the softer material beneath is removed. The result is a rate of rim retreat of approximately 2 feet per year. The amphitheater is not fixed. It is actively, measurably receding. The crowds. The Fairyland Loop. On a peak summer morning, the Navajo Loop trailhead at Sunset Point, the most popular descent into the amphitheater, processes hundreds of hikers per hour. The trail descends 600 feet through switchbacks into the Hoodoo field below, passing through Wall Street, a section of trail running between two fins of rock barely wide enough for two people to pass. The crowds in Wall Street are real. The shoulder-to-shoulder movement at peak hours is real. And yet, the Fairyland Loop, a trail beginning less than a mile north of the visitor center, covering 8 miles through the park's northern amphitheater, sees a fraction of the Navajo Loop's traffic, despite accessing terrain that is, by geological measure, equally extraordinary. The reason? It is longer. It gains and loses more elevation. It does not appear in the standard half-day itinerary. 2.5 million people visit Bryce each year. The Fairyland Loop, on a weekday in July, can be walked in near solitude. It is the same park. The color. The color of Bryce Canyon is not decorative. The pink cliffs are not uniformly pink. The amphitheater presents a range that shifts from deep red through coral, orange, pale pink, cream, and white, depending on the mineral content of individual rock layers and the angle of incident light. The red and orange tones are produced by iron oxide, the same mineral that colors the Entrada sandstone at Arches, the Navajo sandstone at Zion, the canyon walls of the Grand Canyon. Iron oxidizing in the presence of water produces hematite, which is red, or goethite, which is yellow-orange. The white and cream layers mark rock strata that were deposited in lower oxygen or less mineralized conditions. The chemistry of the ancient lake that formed this rock, varying layer by layer over millions of years. At the moment of sunrise, low-angle light strikes the amphitheater at the precise angle that intensifies the iron oxide response. For 10 to 15 minutes, the Hoodoos shift to a deep red that is not visible at any other time of day. Sunrise Point is named for accuracy, not sentiment. Most visitors do not arrive early enough to see it. The wildlife. Utah prairie dogs, Cinemus parvidens, a species found only in southwestern Utah and listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, maintain colonies in the meadow areas along the rim. Bryce Canyon supports one of the largest and most stable Utah prairie dog populations in existence. The colonies have been protected here since the 1920s, while agricultural and development pressures have reduced the species across the rest of its historic range. Their burrow systems aerate the soil, distribute seeds, and support predator populations, raptors, badgers, coyotes, that in turn define the meadow ecosystem around the amphitheaters. Pronghorn antelope, the fastest land animal in the Western Hemisphere, capable of sustained speeds of 55 miles per hour, move across the park's meadows. Their speed was shaped not by any predator currently alive in North America, but by the pursuit predators that went extinct at the end of the last ice age. The pronghorn is running from ghosts. At the park's highest elevations, bristlecone pines grow on the exposed ridgelines above the rim. Some of the individuals here are over 1,000 years old. They are the oldest living things in the park. They grow in conditions, extreme cold, thin soil, high wind, that prevent almost everything else from establishing. The oldest bristlecone pine ever recorded in the White Mountains of California was over 4,900 years old when it was cut down in 1964. The trees at Bryce are younger than that. They are also still growing. The dark sky. Bryce Canyon is designated an International Dark Sky Park. At an elevation of approximately 8,000 feet, the atmosphere above the amphitheater is roughly 25% thinner than at sea level, meaning less atmospheric scatter, less light absorption, and measurably more stars visible to the naked eye than at any lower elevation site nearby. After dark, the Hoodoos below the rim become pale reflective shapes, barely visible in the ambient starlight, their outlines just distinct enough to register as form rather than darkness. Above them, the Milky Way appears as a structural band, not a smear. Most visitors to Bryce have left before sunset. The sky is there regardless, every night, over an amphitheater that Ebenezer Bryce considered inconvenient and that geologists consider irreplaceable. 2.5 million people visit Bryce Canyon each year. Most of them stand at the overlooks, look down into the amphitheater, and leave before dark. The frost cycle continues without them, 200 times a year. The rim retreats 2 more feet. The Hoodoos below get taller relative to the surface they're eroding from. The bristlecone pines above the rim add another ring. Bryce Canyon is not a viewpoint. It is an active process. The rim is where you arrive. The park is what happens below it, above it, and after dark. If this changed how you see Bryce Canyon, the guide linked in the description goes further. It covers the under-rim permit system, the Fairyland Loop access, the astronomy program schedule, and the seasonal windows when the frost cycle is most active and the crowds are thinnest. Bryce rewards the visitor who arrives early, stays late, and descends below the overlook. Click below to get started.